At their 20th anniversary bash, Sarah and Ethan shine as the ideal couple, until a cryptic text on Sarah's phone sparks doubt. As Ethan toasts their love, a hidden truth threatens to unravel their perfect life. Can they survive the storm of betrayal? The rooftop loft in Seattle buzzed with energy, the city skyline twinkling beyond the open-air venue. Sarah Thompson, 38, stood at the center of it all, her laughter mingling with the clink of champagne glasses. It was their 20th wedding anniversary, a milestone that had drawn friends, family, and colleagues to celebrate her and Ethan, her husband of 40, whose warm voice carried over the crowd as he prepared to speak. The couple was beloved, known for their tireless work at a local food bank, where they'd spent years serving meals and organizing drives. Tonight, their shared legacy shone as brightly as the city lights. Ethan stepped to the microphone, his confidence as a tech entrepreneur evident in his steady posture. 20 years ago, he began, his voice clear, "I promised Sarah we'd build a life together, through every storm, every triumph. Here we are, stronger than ever." The crowd erupted in applause, raising glasses in their honor. Sarah smiled, her hand resting lightly on the table, but her eyes flicked to her phone as it vibrated once, then twice. The screen lit up with a name, Noah. The message preview read, "Can't keep this quiet anymore." Her breath caught, and she quickly pressed the power button, dimming the screen before anyone noticed. She glanced at Ethan, who was still speaking, recounting a story of their first food bank event, a chaotic day of spilled soup and shared laughter that had cemented their bond. The guests chuckled, charmed by the memory, but Sarah's mind raced. Noah, a colleague from the community center where she worked as an organizer, had been texting her for weeks, his messages growing more insistent. She told herself it was nothing, just a friend leaning on her during a tough time. But the weight of his words now pressed against her chest, threatening to crack the perfect image she and Ethan projected. Sarah forced a smile, nodding at a guest's enthusiastic wave, but her fingers tightened around her glass. She scanned the crowd, half expecting to see Noah's face among the familiar ones. He wasn't there. Not yet. Ethan finished his speech, turning to her with a grin. "To Sarah, my partner in everything," he said, raising his glass. The room echoed his toast, but as he stepped toward her, his eyes caught the faint flicker of unease on her face. "You okay?" he asked quietly, his hand brushing hers. "Fine," she said too quickly, "just overwhelmed by all this." She gestured vaguely at the party, hoping her lie would hold. Ethan's brow furrowed, but he nodded, returning to greet a group of coworkers. Sarah's phone buzzed again, and she slipped it into her purse, her heart pounding. She excused herself, weaving through the crowd toward the balcony, where the cool night air might clear her head. Alone, she pulled out her phone and opened Noah's message. "You need to tell him, Sarah. Tonight, or I will." Her stomach twisted. Noah had been a confidant during a rough patch last year, when Ethan's startup had consumed his time, leaving Sarah feeling invisible. She'd shared too much, her frustrations, her doubts, over late-night coffees at the community center. Noah had listened, his empathy drawing her in, but she'd never crossed a physical line. Still, she kept their talks secret, knowing Ethan would misinterpret them. Now, Noah's urgency felt like a trap, and she wasn't sure how to escape it. Deleting the message, she took a deep breath and returned to the party. Ethan was laughing with a group of friends, but his eyes followed her as she rejoined him. "Work stuff?" he asked, his tone casual but probing. Sarah nodded, avoiding his gaze. "Just a volunteer mix-up," she lied, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. She reached for his hand, hoping the gesture would anchor her, but his grip felt different, tentative, as if he sensed something was off. As the band struck up a slow song, Ethan pulled her onto the dance floor. They moved in sync, years of familiarity guiding their steps. "Remember this song?" he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Our first date." Sarah smiled, but her thoughts were elsewhere, replaying Noah's texts. Then, Ethan's voice sharpened, barely audible over the music. "Who's Noah, Sarah?" Her steps faltered, and she looked up to see his eyes locked on hers, searching for the truth. "Just a coworker," she said, her throat dry. "He's helping with a project." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept dancing, his smile fixed for the crowd. "Saw him at the food bank with you last week," he said, his tone deceptively light. Look pretty close. Sarah's pulse raced. She hadn't realized Ethan had noticed. It's nothing, she insisted, but her voice wavered, betraying her. Ethan didn't respond, his silence louder than any accusation. As the song ended, he stepped back, his expression unreadable. Let's enjoy the night, he said, but the warmth in his voice was gone. Sarah watched him walk toward the bar, her mind scrambling for a way to defuse the tension. She hadn't invited Noah, but his text suggested he might show up. The thought sent a chill through her. She scanned the room again, her eyes catching on a familiar figure near the entrance. Noah. He stood there, his posture casual, but his gaze intense, locked on her. Her heart sank. Whatever he was planning, it could unravel everything she and Ethan had built. The party continued around her, oblivious to the storm brewing, but Sarah knew the night was far from over. Noah stood at the edge of the Seattle Loft venue, his presence like a crack in the polished surface of Sarah and Ethan's 20th anniversary celebration. Sarah, 38, froze mid-step, her pulse hammering as she locked eyes with him across the crowded room. The music pulsed, and guests laughed, oblivious to the tension coiling around her. Ethan, 40, was at the bar, chatting with a colleague, but his earlier question, "Who's Noah, Sarah?" still echoed in her mind. She'd brushed it off, claiming Noah was just a co-worker, but Ethan's sharp gaze had told her he wasn't convinced. Now, Noah's uninvited appearance threatened to unravel her carefully guarded secret. Sarah forced herself to move, weaving through the crowd toward Noah, her steps deliberate to avoid drawing attention. Her phone buzzed in her purse, but she ignored it, knowing it was likely another message from him. Noah, a colleague from the community center where she organized events, had been her confidant during a lonely stretch last year when Ethan's startup had consumed his time. Their late-night talks had felt innocent, until Noah's texts grew insistent, hinting at a deeper connection she'd never intended. She'd kept it hidden, fearing Ethan's reaction, but Noah's presence here suggested he was done waiting for her to act. "Sarah," Noah said as she reached him, his voice low but urgent. "We need to talk. Now." His eyes darted toward the crowd, as if checking for Ethan. She shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't be here. This is our anniversary." Noah's jaw tightened, and he stepped closer. "You can't keep pretending nothing happened. Ethan deserves to know." His words hit like a warning shot, and Sarah's stomach churned. "There's nothing to know," she hissed, glancing over her shoulder. Ethan was still at the bar, but his posture had shifted, his head tilted as if he'd noticed her absence. She pulled Noah toward a quieter corner near the venue's entrance, away from prying eyes. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "You can't just show up like this." Noah crossed his arms, his expression a mix of frustration and defiance. "I'm tired of the secrets, Sarah. You told me things about your marriage, about feeling ignored. I thought we had something." Her breath caught. She'd shared her frustrations with Noah. Yes, but only as a friend. Or so she'd told herself. "You're twisting this," she said, her voice shaking. "I was helping you through your divorce. That's all." Noah leaned in, his voice dropping. "Then why didn't you tell Ethan about our talks? Why delete my messages?" Sarah flinched, his words cutting too close to the truth. She had deleted their texts, not because they were incriminating, but because she knew how they'd look: late-night chats, private coffees, moments she'd justified as support for a struggling friend. Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut through the air. "Sarah." Ethan stood a few feet away, his eyes narrowing as he took in Noah's proximity. The music seemed to fade, the crowd's chatter a distant hum. "Ethan," Sarah started, stepping back from Noah. "This is Noah, from the community center." She forced a smile, but her voice wavered. Ethan's gaze flicked to Noah, then back to her. "Didn't realize you invited co-workers," he said, his tone clipped. Noah extended a hand, his smile polite but strained. "Just wanted to congratulate you both," he said. Ethan ignored the gesture, his focus on Sarah. "Funny, you didn't mention him coming." The accusation hung between them, unspoken but heavy. Sarah's mind raced for an explanation, but every word felt like a trap. "I didn't invite him," she said, her voice steadier now. "He must have heard about the party." Noah's eyes flickered with something, anger, maybe, or hurt, but he stayed silent. Ethan's expression hardened. "Right?" he said, then turned to Noah. "Enjoy the party, but don't stay long." The warning was clear, and Noah nodded, stepping back. As Ethan walked away, Sarah felt the weight of his distrust settle over her. She turned to Noah, her voice low and fierce. "Leave. Now." Noah hesitated, then nodded and slipped out the entrance, leaving her alone with her spiraling thoughts. Back in the crowd, Sarah rejoined Ethan, who was now talking to a group of friends about their food bank work. She tried to blend in, laughing at the right moments, but his earlier suspicion lingered in the air. Her phone buzzed again, and she resisted checking it, knowing it would only deepen Ethan's doubts. Instead, she touched his arm, hoping to bridge the growing distance. "Can we talk later?" she asked quietly. He nodded, but his eyes were distant, scanning the room as if searching for answers she wasn't giving. As the night wore on, Sarah noticed Ethan checking his phone, his fingers moving quickly. Her heart sank. Their shared cloud account. He could access her deleted messages if he dug deep enough. She'd been careless, thinking he'd never look. When the band announced a slow dance, Ethan pulled her onto the floor, but his touch was mechanical, his silence deafening. "I saw something," he said finally, his voice low. "Photos. You and Noah at some dinner. Care to explain?" Sarah's steps faltered, her mind scrambling. "It was a work thing," she said, but the lie fell hollow even to her. Ethan's grip tightened slightly, his eyes searching hers. "A work thing you deleted?" "Sarah, I'm not stupid." The music swelled, but the space between them felt like a chasm. She wanted to tell him everything. How Noah's divorce had drawn her in. How she'd only meant to help. How she'd never crossed a physical line. But the words stuck in her throat. Before she could speak, Ethan stepped back, his face unreadable. "We'll talk after the party," he said, then turned to greet a guest, leaving her stranded on the dance floor. Sarah stood there, the weight of her choices pressing down. Noah's intrusion had cracked the facade of their perfect marriage, and Ethan's growing suspicion was a ticking clock. She knew the truth would come out, either from her or from the evidence Ethan might uncover. As she glanced at the exit, half expecting Noah to return, a new fear gripped her. What if Noah wasn't just a friend with bad timing? What if he'd come to force her hand, to expose her in front of everyone? The party continued, but for Sarah, the night was a tightrope, and one misstep could send everything crashing down. Ethan's discovery of Sarah's deleted messages ignites a confrontation that could end their 20-year marriage. As Noah reappears at the party, the tension explodes, exposing secrets in front of everyone. Will Sarah's truth save her or destroy everything? The Seattle loft vibrated with music and laughter, but for Sarah Thompson, 38, the air felt thick with dread. Ethan, her husband of 20 years, had just confronted her on the dance floor, his voice low and cutting. Photos of her and Noah, a co-worker, at a private dinner, deleted but not erased from their shared cloud account. Her weak excuse, "it was a work thing," had crumbled under his scrutiny, and now, as he walked away to greet a guest, Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her. Their 20th anniversary party, meant to celebrate their love and shared work at a local food bank, was unraveling, and Noah's uninvited presence earlier had only tightened the noose around her secret. Sarah lingered near the dance floor, her heart pounding as she scanned the crowd. Ethan, 40, stood with a group of friends, his smile forced, his eyes darting to her every few seconds. She knew he was piecing things together, his tech-savvy mind likely digging deeper into their cloud backups. Last year, when Ethan's startup had left her feeling sidelined, she'd turned to Noah for support. Their talks, late nights at the community center, coffees after work, had been her escape, a way to vent her frustrations. She'd never crossed a physical line, but she'd hidden their closeness, knowing how it would look. Noah's recent texts, demanding she come clean, had turned her lifeline into a threat. Her phone buzzed again, and she slipped into a quiet hallway to check it. Another message from Noah: "I'm back. Meet me outside, or I'll find Ethan." Her stomach lurched. She'd told him to leave, but his persistence felt like a deliberate push to ruin her. She typed a quick reply, "Stay away," and deleted it, her hands trembling. As she turned to rejoin the party, Ethan appeared at the hallway's entrance, his posture rigid. "We need to talk," he said, his voice calm but laced with anger. "Now." Sarah followed him to a secluded corner near the venue's exit, her mind racing for a way to explain. "Ethan, she started, but he cut her off, holding up his phone. "I found the messages, Sarah." You and Noah, planning dinners, late-night chats. You deleted them, but they're still here. He tapped the screen, showing a screenshot of a text. I need you, Sarah. Ethan doesn't get it. Her breath caught. She'd forgotten how damning those words looked out of context. It's not what you think, she said, her voice shaking. Noah was going through a divorce. I was just being a friend. Ethan's eyes narrowed. A friend? You lied to me for months. Hit him. What? His voice rose slightly, drawing a glance from a passing guest. Sarah stepped closer, desperate to keep this private. I was scared you'd misunderstand. You were so busy with work, I felt alone. Noah listened. That's all it was, talking. Ethan shook his head, his jaw tight. You chose him over me. Over us. That's betrayal, Sarah. The word hit like a blade, and she flinched, tears pricking her eyes. Before she could respond, a voice interrupted. Ethan, Sarah, everything okay? Noah stood a few feet away, his tone falsely casual, as if he hadn't just crashed their anniversary. Sarah's heart sank. Ethan turned, his fists clenching. What are you doing here? He demanded. Noah raised his hands, playing innocent. Just wanted to clear the air? Sarah's been helping me through a tough time. Thought you should know. His words were smooth, but the implication was sharp, twisting their friendship into something more. Ethan stepped toward Noah, his voice rising. Helping you? By sneaking around? Meeting behind my back. Guests nearby turned, their conversations fading as the tension spilled into the open. Sarah grabbed Ethan's arm. Please, not here, she whispered, but he shook her off, his focus on Noah. You think you can waltz into my marriage and play the victim? He snapped. Noah's calm cracked, his eyes flashing. Maybe if you'd been there for her, she wouldn't have needed me. The words were a spark to dry tinder. Ethan's face darkened, and Sarah stepped between them, her voice desperate. Stop it, both of you. Noah, leave. Ethan, let me explain. But the damage was done. Guests whispered, phones subtly raised to capture the drama. Ethan's voice boomed, raw with hurt. Explain what, Sarah? That you let this guy into our lives while I was building a future for us. Noah tried to speak, but Ethan cut him off. You crossed the line, both of you. Sarah's throat tightened, shame and guilt crashing over her. Ethan, I never meant to hurt you. It was a mistake, but not what you think. I swear. Her voice broke, but Ethan's expression was stone. I trusted you, he said, quieter now, the fight draining from him. And you broke that. He turned to Noah. Get out. Now. Noah hesitated, then backed away, disappearing into the crowd. The guests' murmurs grew, their eyes heavy on Sarah as Ethan walked toward the bar, leaving her exposed. She stood frozen, the weight of her choices suffocating her. Noah's manipulation had pushed her into this corner, but she'd let it happen, too afraid to be honest with Ethan. The party continued, but the celebration felt hollow, the music a mockery of the joy they'd started with. Sarah knew the truth was out, but not fully. Ethan didn't know Noah's role in twisting their friendship, and she wasn't sure he'd believe her if she tried to explain. As she watched him from across the room, his shoulders slumped, she realized the real fight wasn't with Noah. It was to save what she and Ethan had built. But first, she had to face the wreckage of this night. The Seattle loft, once alive with celebration, now felt like a stage after a ruined performance. Sarah Thompson, 38, stood near the bar, the hum of whispers from lingering guests cutting through the fading music. Their 20th anniversary party had shattered when Ethan, her husband of 40, confronted Noah, her co-worker, over their hidden connection. Ethan's accusations, fueled by deleted messages and photos he'd found, had spilled into public view, leaving Sarah humiliated and Ethan storming out. The weight of her choices pressed down, her secret no longer hers to control. Sarah clutched her phone, its screen dark but heavy with the text from Noah that had sparked this disaster. Last year, when Ethan's startup had consumed his time, she confided in Noah, a colleague at the community center, about her loneliness. Their talks had felt safe, until Noah's insistence on coming clean turned them into a weapon. She'd hidden their friendship, fearing Ethan's reaction, but Noah's uninvited appearance tonight had forced everything into the open. Now, Ethan was gone, and the guests' sidelong glances burned into her. She slipped out of the venue, the cool night air sharp against her skin. Driving home, her mind replayed Ethan's words. You broke that. His trust, their marriage, shattered by her silence. At their house, she found a note on the kitchen counter in Ethan's handwriting. I can't stay here tonight. You chose to lie. I need space. The words stung, but they also sparked a flicker of resolve. She'd let Noah's manipulation and her own fear dictate too much. It was time to face the truth, starting with herself. Sarah sat at the table, scrolling through her phone's cloud backups. The messages she deleted were still there, just as Ethan had found them. Noah's late-night texts, her replies venting about Ethan's absence, a photo of them at a diner after a community event. Out of context, they looked damning, but she saw now how Noah had steered their talks, pushing for more than friendship. She texted him, "We need to meet. Tomorrow. Public place." Her fingers shook, but she hit send, determined to end his influence. The next morning, Sarah woke to an empty house, Ethan's absence a quiet ache. She called his friend Jake, who confirmed Ethan was staying at a hotel, too hurt to talk. "He's devastated, Sarah," Jake said. "He thinks there was more to you and Noah." The words fueled her urgency. She needed to prove the truth, not just to Ethan, but to herself. At noon, she met Noah at a busy cafe near the community center, her phone set to record in her pocket. She'd checked Washington's laws. One-party consent meant she could legally capture their talk. Noah arrived, his posture tense, but his tone light. "Sarah, I didn't mean for last night to blow up like that." She cut him off, her voice firm. "Why did you come? I told you to stay away." Noah leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "Because you were lying to Ethan. To yourself. You told me you felt trapped in your marriage. I thought you wanted out." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I was venting, Noah. You were supposed to be a friend, not twist my words into something they weren't." He shrugged, unapologetic. "You kept meeting me. Kept replying. What was I supposed to think?" Sarah leaned forward, keeping her voice steady. "You knew I was married. You pushed me to keep it secret, made it seem like I had to hide it." "Why?" Noah's calm cracked, his voice sharp. "Because I cared about you. Ethan wasn't there. I was." The admission hung between them, and Sarah's recording captured it all. "You took advantage of my kindness," she said, "and now my marriage is at stake because of it." Noah stood, his chair scraping. "You made your choices, Sarah. Don't blame me." He left, and Sarah stopped the recording, her hand steady now. She felt a clarity she hadn't in months. Noah had exploited her vulnerability, but she'd enabled it by hiding the truth. She drove to the hotel where Ethan was staying, the recording saved on her phone. At the lobby, she texted him, "I need 5 minutes. Please." After a long pause, he replied, "Down in 10. Ethan appeared, his eyes guarded but weary. Sarah didn't waste time. "I messed up, Ethan. I hid my talks with Noah because I was scared you'd see them the wrong way. But he manipulated me, pushed me to keep secrets." She played the recording, Noah's voice admitting his pursuit filling the quiet lobby. Ethan listened, his expression unreadable. When it ended, he exhaled. "Why didn't you tell me when it started?" he asked, his voice raw. Sarah met his gaze. "I was afraid of losing you. I thought I could handle it alone. I was wrong." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, processing. "I need to know everything, Sarah. No more secrets." She nodded, tears welling but held back. "I'll tell you anything you ask. I want to fix this." He didn't respond, but he didn't walk away either. "I'm not ready to come home," he said finally. "But I'll think about it." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a crack in the wall between them. Sarah left the hotel, the recording a small victory, but only the start of her fight to rebuild. Back home, she emailed the community center's HR, attaching the recording and a detailed account of Noah's behavior. She knew it could cost him his job, but his actions had consequences. As she hit send, her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Let's talk tomorrow." It was a lifeline, fragile but real. Sarah sat in the quiet house, the weight of her mistakes still heavy, but for the first time, she felt she was moving toward truth, not running from it. The party's wreckage lingered, but so did her resolve to face it head-on. Sarah Thompson, 38, sat in a Seattle coffee shop, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug, waiting for Ethan. Their 20th anniversary party, meant to celebrate their love and shared work at a local food bank, had imploded days ago when Ethan, 40, uncovered her hidden talks with Noah, a manipulative coworker. The public confrontation had left Sarah exposed, Ethan devastated, and their marriage hanging by a thread. Her recorded confession from Noah, admitting he'd pursued her knowing she was married, had been a step toward truth, but it wasn't enough. Ethan's text last night, "Let's talk tomorrow," was a fragile hope, and Sarah clung to it. Ethan arrived, his posture stiff but his eyes softer than at the hotel where she'd played him the recording. He sat across from her, silent at first, his fingers tapping the table. "I'll listen to it again," he said finally, his voice low. Noah's voice, admitting he pushed you. "It helps, but it doesn't erase what you hid." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "I know. I should have told you from the start. I'll let my fear take over." She leaned forward, her voice steady. "I'm here to answer anything, Ethan. No more secrets." He exhaled, his gaze fixed on her. "Why Noah? Why him and not me?" The question cut deep, and Sarah took a breath to answer honestly. "You were buried in your startup. I felt invisible. Noah was there, listening, and I leaned into it without thinking. But it was never more than talk, and I stopped it when it felt wrong. I just didn't know how to tell you." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "I wasn't there for you. I see that now. But your silence hurt more than anything." Sarah reached for his hand, pausing when he didn't pull away. "I broke our trust," she said, "but I want to earn it back. I've signed us up for counseling, starting next week, if you're willing." Ethan studied her, then nodded slowly. "I'll try, but it's going to take time." It wasn't a promise of forgiveness, but it was a start. Sarah felt a weight lift, though the road ahead was daunting. They agreed to meet at the food bank that evening, a place where their shared purpose had always grounded them. At the community center, Sarah submitted her formal complaint to HR, attaching Noah's recorded confession and a timeline of his oversteps. She'd learned from a colleague that Noah had a history of blurring lines with coworkers, exploiting their empathy. The HR director confirmed they'd investigate, and by the next day, Noah was suspended pending review. The news spread quietly among staff, and Sarah felt a mix of relief and guilt, not for Noah's consequences, but for her role in letting things escalate. She vowed to set clearer boundaries, starting with her marriage. That evening, Sarah and Ethan worked side by side at the food bank, packing meals for families. The rhythm of their task, sorting cans, sealing bags, felt familiar, a reminder of their early days together. They didn't speak much, but their movements synced, a silent understanding growing. When a volunteer thanked them for their dedication, Ethan glanced at Sarah, a faint smile breaking through. "We're a team," he said, more to her than the volunteer. The words carried weight, a small bridge over the chasm between them. Over the next week, they attended their first counseling session. The therapist pushed them to confront hard truths. Ethan's neglect during his startup's crunch, Sarah's choice to seek solace elsewhere. It was raw, uncomfortable, but necessary. Sarah shared how Noah's manipulation had preyed on her vulnerability, while Ethan admitted his work had blinded him to her needs. They left the session drained, but committed, agreeing to weekly meetings and small steps to rebuild trust, like daily check-ins. No phones at dinner. One evening, they sat at a quiet diner, a place they'd frequented early in their marriage. Over coffee, Ethan spoke first. "I don't want to lose what we have, Sarah, but we can't go back to how it was." She nodded, her eyes steady. "I don't want that either. I want us to be honest, even when it's messy." They toasted with their mugs, a gesture both nostalgic and new. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a pact to try, grounded in the work they'd started in counseling. Months later, the community center informed Sarah that Noah had been let go after the investigation confirmed his pattern of misconduct. The news felt like closure, a just outcome that didn't rely on vengeance but accountability. Sarah and Ethan continued volunteering, their shared mission a steady anchor. At the food bank, they laughed over a spilled bag of rice, the moment light but meaningful. It wasn't the polished perfection of their anniversary party, but it was real. As they walked home under the Seattle stars, Ethan took Sarah's hand. "We're not fixed," he said, "but we're fighting for it." Sarah squeezed his hand, her voice soft. "That's enough for now." The night stretched ahead, not without shadows, but with a shared resolve to face them together. Their marriage, once fractured, was mending through truth and effort, a testament to the strength they'd rediscovered in each other.